guys, so today I'm going to be doing a little bit different video. I'm going to do a story time video. So today I'm going to share you the story of my ex-boyfriend stalker story. Now I'm not one of those people that have a new story time video like every other day and they've got all these crazy things happening, but this is one story that I've told before that is a little crazy and dramatic, so I thought maybe you guys would enjoy seeing this today. So it all started, when I was about 19. That is the year of MySpace. Like, MySpace was huge. Early 2000s. Oh my gosh. This was probably in like 2004, 2005-ish. So I was on MySpace, and at the time you could see like other people who were in your area, and it's kind of like the Tinder of its day where it would like have little blinking lights and you could like search people who were in your area. So I found this guy in my area. It didn't say his age on his profile, but you know, I saw his picture. He looked to be about my age. I don't remember if he messaged me or I messaged him. I'm not exactly sure, but he ended up living just like 5 minutes from where I lived. We started talking online, and like, I don't know if we video chatted or something. I'm not sure, but there's some way that I was like, okay, this is a real guy, not like a catfish, which we know is like huge these days. Catfishing is all the rage. I was a very, very naive 19-year-old girl, like super naive. I did make some choices that probably weren't the smartest, and luckily nothing ever happened to me. But at that time, I just didn't really think about it too much. One random day, you know, we're talking, and then I was like, you know what, I'll just drive over to your house and meet you. All right, so I drove over to his house, and like I said, he only lives like 5 minutes from me. He ended up going to the same high school that I went to. So there's so many things that were like comfortable growing up in the same town that I didn't really think it was that weird meeting him from online. At the time though, meeting online was like a huge no-no. Like, people did not do that. You thought they were gonna be like serial killers, and I knew my parents wouldn't approve. So I did tell a little fib, and I told that my family that I had met him while cutting his hair because I worked at a salon cutting hair, and I was like, you know, that's a pretty probable way to meet someone. So I drove to his house, and I was like, let's give him a name. We'll call him Peter. I pull up, and I was like, is Peter here? And his dad was like outside weeding the yard and stuff, and I was like, okay, so you live with your parents, that's fine. I still live with mine. He's like, sure, you know, Peter, whatever. He comes out and just like gives me a hug, and I'm like, whoa, like, I just met you. That kind of shocked me. I was like, okay, hi, you know, and then we just like went inside, and he kind of introduced me to his family, and we just like sat at his kitchen table and talked, and just like real chill. So then he's like, well, I'd really like to take you out sometime. And I was like, okay. So we made a plan for a date for the next couple days, and that was that. So we met up for the day, and I believe that I came to his house. I did not have him come to my house yet. And we went to a Chinese place, and we had Chinese food. So when he goes to pay, I noticed that he uses a Visa gift card, which is fine, but I was just like noticing that it was a gift card, not like debit card. And I was really snooty, I'll be honest. Like, I was like, so he pays for dinner, and he's like checking out, and he's like, hey, you know, since I paid for dinner, why don't you pay for bowling, and we'll go bowling? And I was like, well, how about you pay for dinner and we don't go bowling then? So instead of going bowling, we just like went to his house and watched a movie, which I just thought was weird. Like, okay, this guy must be cheap or whatever. But he was really nice. He didn't send off that huge creeper vibe, except for like, he was kind of like extra excited to see me. And I was like, oh, well, he must just really like me or be attracted to me. So he seemed like happy, but he wasn't like weird, like handsy or anything. He was just being really nice, respectful, and everything like that. Okay guys, we're just going to stop here for a second because I forgot to tell you something. So after thinking about it, I realized that he did indeed pick me up at my work and not at my house, and I did not meet him at his house for the date because I forgot. But the next day after our date, he actually brought me a dozen purple roses, and I was like so shocked, and I was like, this guy must really like me. From there, we were probably on like our third or fourth date, and you know, I was thinking things were super casual. Like, I was not interested in being like exclusive dating. These had gone over a couple of weeks. You know, I did not think that we were like exclusive boyfriend and girlfriend at this point. And he just starts like telling me these weird things. He was just like, oh, I just want to let you know that I can't have kids. And I was like, okay, that's really TMI, but thanks for sharing. Like, kids is like so far out of my realm right now. Like, I'm not even thinking about that. And he's like, well, I just think someone I date should know. And I was like, okay. Like, do you want to be exclusive? And I was like, well, I'm still dating other people. I was like, if you only want to date me, that's fine. But just know that I'm not ready to do that. I'm wanting to date other people. And he's like, okay, well, I'm fine with that. I was like, okay, whatever. So over the like next couple of dates, like they were pretty chill. Like we ended up not spending a lot of money, and it came to find out that he had just lost his job. And me being the really naive girl, I was just like, oh, he just lost his job. That's so sad. Like, you know, that's fine. We can just like hang out with friends or like watch a movie or something. Like that's totally fine. And I think at this point he had come to my house and met my parents, and like we were kind of dating more, even though we were like totally exclusive. Like he was considering me his girlfriend, even though I was like, whatever. So I was helping him like look for jobs, and he was like looking for like a cellular wireless job, and he had been going to college somewhere, but then he had to drop out because he had an accident and had this huge ambulance bill. And I was like, okay, like all these sob stories, and I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry. So then it started being where like we drive through Wendy's and he's like, oh, I don't have any money, so then I would pay for it. I'm like, seriously, there's so many red flags everywhere that I'm just like totally blindsided by, because I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't mind paying for this, even though I was working full time, making good money, whatever. So during this period, I also moved out and I got an apartment with my friend. And so I was like, you know, being self-sufficient and everything. So then there was one day I was in his house and I noticed a painting, and his dad was a painter. And I was like, well, that's a really interesting painting. I was like, who is that in the painting? Is that you, or is that your sister? He's like, yeah, that's me and my sister. And I'm like, I said, well, how old is she? And he said, oh, she's 25. And I said, well, I didn't realize you had an older sister. And he's like, oh, she's my younger sister. And I'm like, wait, younger sister? And I was like, how old are you? And he's like, oh, I'm 29. I'm like, what? Do you know how old I am? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm only 19. He's like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't bother me. Okay, when you're like in your young 20s, I don't mind that you live at home with your parents, or you don't have a college education, or you don't have a job or money. But I'm like, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but by 29, I think you should kind of have your life together in some sort of way. So I was just like, oh, okay, all right. And me being the really naive girl, I was just like, all right, well, whatever. My parents didn't ask how old he was. He didn't look 29. He looked like he was the same age as me, and I looked young for my age. So I was just like, oh, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. In the next couple of weeks, you know, we kind of had some more like hanging out or casual dates, or I'd stop by after work and just see him, but it was still like pretty casual. And at that point, even though I was saying that he wasn't my boyfriend, he really was the only person that I was dating. So I was like, yeah, I guess he kind of is my boyfriend. Then one night I was at his house. My friends were trying to call me on my cell phone. I didn't answer. So I went out to my car, and they had left a note on my car, and they're like, Amber, we need to talk to you ASAP. And I was like, that's really weird. It's really weird they'd come over and leave a note on my car. So I talked to my friends, and they're like, dude, you shouldn't date this guy. Like, he is a stalker. Like, my friend dated him that I worked with, and he like followed her around, and he like spent all her money and all this stuff. And then I got completely defensive and stupid. And I was like, no, he's not like that. Like, he just lost his job. He had a job before that. And suddenly, like, I'm talking myself into dating this guy that I still wasn't really sure about dating. And they're like, beware. So then, instead of doing the smart thing and breaking up with him, I was stupid and just kind of pushed my friends away, and I was like, no, I still want to date him. I don't know why. I don't know why. So then, you know, a couple weeks goes by, and like we're just like hanging out, and our dates were always super chill. Like, usually ended up with us like hanging out at his house with his sister. I met his sister and her kids, and so we'd play with the kids and play with the dog, and just like really chill, like hanging out kind of things, like going on a walk or something. And then one night we were outside, and this lady who was super drunk was like wandering through the field behind his house, and we're like, oh, ma'am, can we help you? Like, she's crying, and we're like, what is going on? And she's just like, I got in a fight with my boyfriend, and I don't know where I am. And we're like, oh my gosh. Well, instead of, again, doing the smart thing and just like calling the police to come get her, I got her in my car, and I said, I'll take you home. So we got in the car, and we drove back to where her house was. It must have been like 2 miles. And she's like, oh, no. I don't want him to see me, so just drop me off here. So then we just dropped her off at a random street. And then we went to like a church parking lot, and we just called the cops, and we're like, hey, just so you know, we let this lady go. She's severely intoxicated. I don't want anything to happen to her. She said her boyfriend beat her, but she wanted to go back home. And then we let them, and they're like, yeah, you shouldn't have put her in her car. And I'm like, yeah, that probably wasn't really smart. Where was he on that one? I don't know. So then I was just kind of like, I don't know. I think this is all getting to be too much. So we ended up getting a job at the cell phone place. But I mean, when you work at a cell phone place, you're probably really not making a lot of money. He just started. And I kind of inquired after him, like, how come you never finished college? And he just fed me the same ambulance story. And I was just like, this is weird. And I was just like, you know, I was kind of having second thoughts. And I was like, maybe I should break up with him. This is just, I don't know. So then the final straw, well, one of the final straws is it was a Sunday afternoon and I was out on the front porch because this is the summer and I was putting acrylics on my nails. So I'm just like sitting out there because it was really strong smelling and my parents didn't like it. So I just do it outside. And he calls on the phone. I literally had one hand done and he's like, I'm in Salt Lake. My truck is broken down and I need you to come get me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, okay. I'm like halfway done doing my nails, but sure. I'm like, can't your family come get you? He's like, no, my family's upset at me. They won't come get me. I'm like, do you have any friends? Or like, am I seriously the last resort? Because at this point I was still like already pulling away from him. And I don't think I'd seen him in like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And I'm like, am I really the only person? He's like, you're really the only person. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I drive out there and it's on the side of this busy road where there's no shoulder. So I'm like pulling my car off the side of the road and there's his truck and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this isn't safe. Like there's cars whizzing all around. It was like kind of, you come around the corner and there we were. I was like, this is bad for so many reasons. And I was kind of annoyed at him because I was just like, seriously, like, what are you doing down here? What's wrong? So then I just had this feeling like he was going to ask me for money. So I like called the tow truck. The tow truck comes and then I start taking him home and he's just like, yeah, that tow truck's going to be this much money and stuff. And I could tell it's coming. And he's like, well, you know, my new job is good, but I just really started. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you money. And he's like, well, like backtracking. I'm like, I'm not giving you money. Like if you need money, you need to go ask your parents. Oh, I've already asked my parents. I was like, okay, you don't have any college education that like gets you anything. Like you need to go back to school. You need to get out of your parents' house. Like you need to be successful. I just started going off on this guy. And he's like, you're just like my parents. You just tell me to be responsible, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, okay, I'm so done here. So then he gets out of the car, he goes home and I'm just like, I'm done. And I'm thinking I'll never see him again, right? So then I go home and probably a week later, I was out and I went to work and, this lady's like, oh yeah, so-and-so stopped by for you. And I was like, really? That's weird. Why did he come by? She's like, oh no, like he just stopped by. He just wanted to say hi. I was like, okay, whatever. So then a couple days later, he comes in and he brought me some Fun Dip. And he's like, oh, I know you really like Fun Dip. So I just wanted to bring this to you. I hope that we can still be friends. I was like, yeah, we can still be friends, which is code for, I don't really want to talk to you ever again, but sure, if it makes you feel better, we'll be friends. So I was like, okay, thanks, bye. And then he left. Then he came back a couple days later and then he brought me a Snickers bar. This continued for like a week and then he brought me Pop-Tarts. He just like stopped in randomly and I was like, yeah, okay. So then like he had tried calling me and texting me and I just kind of stopped answering his calls and texts. So then he came in one last time. This had probably been going on for like maybe 2 weeks. And he's like, so I went to by your apartment the other day and you weren't there. And I was like, okay. And he's like, so then I drove to your parents' house and your car was outside and I knocked on the door and you weren't there either. So then I came over here and you weren't here. So I just didn't know where you were and you wouldn't answer my calls. And I was like, why are you following me? And he's like, I'm just trying to be your friend. Like you told me we could be friends and this is me trying to be your friend. Can't friends do nice things for each other and bring friend stuff? I was like, I don't need your candy. I don't need your Pop-Tarts. I don't need whatever you're bringing me. Like stop following me around. And he's like, I'm not following you around. I was like, okay, you're calling me all the time. You're coming to my house, my parents' house, my work. I'm like, you just need to stop. And he just started getting defensive. And I said, and this is literally what I said. I said, you know, last time I checked, stalking is illegal in all 50 states. So he called me the B word and I was like, fine, if that's what I have to be to make you leave me alone, then I will. I don't even care. I don't care if you call me that because if that'll make you leave me alone, then that's what I'm going to be. And he was just like, fine, I won't talk to you anymore. And so then he turned around and left and I was like, glory, hallelujah, finally this guy's left me alone. But it really creeped me out because I'm like, okay, he's following me around. This is just weird. And then I just felt stupid because I was like, I was such an idiot to think that, anyway, just long story. So then fast forward a few years, I ended up seeing him at Walmart a couple years later after I was married. Like he came up to talk to me and he's like, hi. And I'm like, hi. And I'm like, how are you? And he's like, good. I'm like, oh yeah, you know. He's like, oh, I just went to school for phlebotomy. And I was like, oh, good for you. Glad you're doing something with your life. And he's like, yeah. Fast forward a few more years. So this would probably be like 6 or 7 years since we dated. I'm in Home Depot and I'm with my husband. I'm picking out some paint samples. And he literally walks through and he's with some other guy and he's wearing a Domino's jacket and like carrying a Domino's pizza. And he's like, hey, Amber, hi. And I'm like, hi, Peter. And then he like walks away and my husband like looks at me and he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's him. That's Peter. And he's just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, don't worry. You know, he was dating me when he was almost 30. Now it's almost 10 years later and he's delivering pizzas. I mean, granted, props to you, do what you gotta do, but I'm like, seriously, get it together. You're almost 40. So that was the last time I saw him. And I wish him no ill. I wish him good luck with his life. But I hope you guys enjoyed hearing this. And if I have anything else exciting about my life, I will do another story time. But I don't know because I'm kind of a boring person. So we'll see. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye!